Mandalorians didn't just wage war on civilizations they intended to conquer and the wider Republic. They also fought amongst themselves. The biggest of these conflicts was the Mandalorian Civil War that lasted about a decade. I found some conflicting dates for this war's beginning, anywhere from 60 BBY to 41 BBY. A Mandalorian called Jaster Mereel introduced a doctrine he constructed to try and transform the Mandalorians from scattered guns for hire to respected mercenaries for hire. Even so many years on, they were unable to hit the heights that they had found during the Mandalorian Wars. At the same time as Mereel's proclamation, a group seen as radicals within the Mandalorian culture, Death Watch, rose in popularity. This group was led by Tor Vizsla. He wanted to return Mandalorians to their former glory as conquerors. This was the catalyst for the Civil War. With the people knowing they were less, galactically speaking, than their predecessors, but still a proud culture of warriors, anything could have lit the fuse to give them an excuse to fight. Mereel led one side, calling themselves True Mandalorians, and Vizsla's Death Watch became Zealot. During the Battle of Korta 6, Mereel was betrayed by his second-in-command, Montrose. Mereel walked his troops into an ambush by Death Watch. Montrose made his move mid-battle, striking Mereel down but not killing him. He left him for dead. Vizsla found his wounded opponent and finished the job. Montrose thought this betrayal, a move without honor if you ask me, would make him a Mandalore. A young warrior whom Mereel raised as a son and who would become the most recognizable Mandalorian in the galaxy, Jango Fett, stepped up and exposed the betrayer. Montrose was banished from Mandalorian society, a fate probably worse than death to this warrior culture. Jango Fett took up the mantle of Mandalore and led the true Mandalorians against Death Watch, a responsibility he took as a burden, not a move he made for personal gain. Jango Fett was part of Clan Fett, but that was not his birth name. He was a human, originally from Concord Dawn. His parents were killed and his sister went missing when he was a child. The Mandalorians brought him in as a foundling. They adopted him into their ways and trained him to be a warrior. Clan Fett is where Jango obtained his surname. In that way, he continues Cass's lineage from a clan perspective, but is not part of the same bloodline. Jango Fett won the Battle of Korta 6, even with his army being betrayed and the sudden change in leadership, but Death Watch struck again. This time, they used manipulation rather than brute force. During the Battle of Galadran, Death Watch tricked the Jedi Order into intervening in the Mandalorian Civil War. They killed the true Mandalorians, Jango Fett being the sole surviving member of that faction. He was sold into slavery, not by the Jedi, and escaped soon after. He was defeated in battle, lost his troops, and saw some of the worst aspects of the galaxy, slavery. Once he escaped, he chose a solitary existence and did not return to Mandalore. He instead became one of the most prolific and feared bounty hunters in the galaxy. The Mandalorian Civil War is a legend, but the canon counterpart, called the Great Clan Wars, also saw opposing ideologies at war. The true Mandalorians are known in this version as the New Mandalorian Movement, and Death Watch is still Death Watch. In this version, the new Mandalorians come out ahead and take control of Mandalore's government with the help of the Jedi, namely Obi-Wan Kenobi. Duchess Satine Kryze sits on the throne, ushering in an era of peace for the once warrior culture. Death Watch is exiled to the moon of Concordia. In a move to try and maintain the peace, Satine refused to pick a side during the Clone Wars. The Clone Wars is a larger divide in Mandalorian legends and canon history. Legends has a group of Mandalorian mercenaries, called the Mandalorian Protectors, who take money from Dooku to aid the Separatists. This makes sense as the majority of these protectors once served under Jango Fett, who Dooku knew through the cloning program. This diverges even more from canon, as the Protectors were led by a clone of Jango's called Spar, who went rogue from the Grand Army of the Republic and deemed himself Mandalore the Resurrector. The Protectors were a strong asset in the battle until the Battle of Norval II, where the Republic forces killed all but three. Spar, Fen Shaisa, and Tabi Dalla were the only remaining Protectors. That defeat was the end of the Mandalorians' role in the Clone Wars in this legend. In canon, Duchess Satine did what she could to keep Mandalore neutral, but the war still found them. Pre-Vizsla and his exiled Death Watch had support from a governor called Almec. The two wanted to overthrow the Duchess and rule Mandalore in the way that they saw fit. Death Watch fought for the Confederacy of Independent Systems for a while before throwing in with Maul. Maul was no longer a Sith and only felt allegiance to himself. He was looking to create his own power base, and recruiting a culture of warriors was a great place to start. In 19 BBY, Maul, with Death Watch under his command, launched a coup against Mandalore and took power from Satine. Vizsla wielded the Darksaber in battle, thinking that the coup and his possession of the weapon would make him the leader. When the war was won, Maul killed Vizsla in single combat, claiming the Darksaber and claiming his spot as the ruler of Mandalore. Maul's reign didn't last long. Rogue former Jedi Ahsoka Tano led a faction of loyal clone troopers teamed up with Bo-Katan Kryze, which is Duchess Satine's sister, to take the planet back. Though they won and captured Maul, their victory was even shorter-lived than his was. Palpatine initiated Order 66, and everything fell apart. If you're getting value or entertainment out of any of my transmissions, it would mean a lot if you would join the Remnant and subscribe. Once the Galactic Republic was crushed by the Galactic Empire, things for Mandalore and the Mandalorian people got far worse. There was a glimmer of hope, however brief, that saw Bo-Katan Kryze leading Mandalore with the symbolic power of the Darksaber. Kryze wanted the best for her people and refused to submit to the Empire. Of course, the Empire wouldn't allow any system, let alone one populated by a formidable warrior culture, to turn their backs on them. They established their own puppet leader, Gar Saxon. Despite being yet another puppet of Palpatine's, Saxon was a formidable Mandalorian in his own right. He was a part of Death Watch and loyal to Pre-Vizsla. When Vizsla was killed by Maul in single combat, Saxon's loyalties shifted. You can either see this as Saxon not actually being loyal, or as a warrior who respected strength, and Maul's victory showed him to be the true leader. Saxon served Maul during the Clone Wars, where they were involved in many battles against the Separatist droid armies. He even rescued Maul from Darth Sidious when Maul was captured. As the Clone Wars drew to a close, Saxon fought against a joint force of Republic troops and the Mandalore resistance, killing many of his own people before his side would ultimately lose the battle for Mandalore. Saxon used his influence and clan name to rally many other Mandalorian clans to his side. This new alliance forced Kryze to flee her post as leader and go into hiding. Saxon, a Mandalorian, was now in the top position, but it was the Empire that actually ruled Mandalore. The people of Mandalore suffered. Many were drafted into military service for the Empire as super commandos. To take a step out of the galaxy for a minute, the original concept for what would ultimately become Boba Fett was originally intended to be an Imperial super soldier. So this is a cool full circle moment in the franchise. Some Mandalorians formed yet another splinter group to rebel against Imperial rule and Saxon. One important leader of this latest revolution was Sabine Wren of Clan Wren. She personally talked Kryze into wielding the Darksaber as a symbol of her rightful place as ruler and as a symbol of Mandalorian freedom. In one BBY, Wren and Kryze, with the help from Mandalorian and Rebel Alliance allies, successfully overthrew the Empire's rule of the planet and defeated Saxon. This victory, like so many in Mandalorian history, was short-lived. It seems these people are destined to be caught in the middle of unending conflicts. The Empire didn't take this defeat lightly. Controlling Mandalore was no longer their goal. Their new mandate was genocide. Toward the end of the Galactic Civil War, the Empire attacked. The event would become known as the Great Purge of Mandalore. A powerful leader with aspirations of personal power, Moff Gideon, led Imperial forces in a bombing campaign so severe it turned most of the planet's surface to a glass-like substance. Thousands, perhaps millions, died in what the few surviving Mandalorians would refer to as the Night of 1,000 Tears. In an attempt to stop this travesty from happening, Kryze surrendered the Darksaber to Gideon. Gideon did not keep his word and allowed the killing to proceed. By the time the Empire fell, Mandalorians were nearly extinct. Their home planet was almost entirely depopulated. Those who remained scattered throughout the galaxy went into hiding, in many cases very literally, to try to preserve something of their people's way of life. Those who did not go into hiding used their warrior skills to become mercenaries or bounty hunters. This time for the Mandalorian people was no better in Legends. Mandalore was weak when Palpatine declared himself emperor. Initially, he offered a form of forgiveness, if you can call it that, which meant he wouldn't go to war with them, but installed an occupying imperial presence on their primary planet. Many of the clan leaders allowed this to happen as they were paid off for their agreement. Palpatine's grasp on the planet tightened and the agreed-upon presence became an oppressive rule. The City of Bone was created inside the skeleton of a massive mythosaur. This was done intentionally as a way to slight the Mandalorians and downplay their history and beliefs. A new version of Death Watch rose and helped the Empire enslave the Mandalorian people and strip the planet of its natural resources. A resistance began to form. A veteran Mandalorian of the Protectors called Fen Shaisa took the title Mandalore. This was not done for self-importance or to gain power. Shaisa took it on as a burden and duty. Mandalorians loyal to him and the Rebel Alliance fought against Imperial rule for the duration of the Galactic Civil War. By the time the second Death Star is destroyed, Shaisa's war is a success and the Mandalorian people rule Mandalore once again. This savior Mandalore served as ruler for a short time, working with the New Republic as allies before he died. With the Empire defeated and Mandalore no longer being ruled by a foreign power, things didn't simply go back to normal. The planet was still in utter ruin and the people scattered. Many didn't believe they ever could go back to the old ways of Mandalorian culture. The entire galaxy was fragile at this time. It's good the Empire was largely defeated, but it left a huge power vacuum. The New Republic was on shaky legs trying to repair a galaxy that had been devastated by constant war. Mandalorians were untrustworthy of the new government, not convinced they would be so different from the previous one. They feared another purge if they let themselves be known. A Mandalorian zealot, working as a bounty hunter, Din Djarin, got involved with a plot so much bigger than anything he had experienced in his entire life. This was totally by accident when he took a bounty from the Imperial Remnant that led to questionable experiments being conducted on a being that you would see as a child. Saving this child led Djarin down a path that would ally him with Bo-Katan Kryze. He would even win the Darksaber in single combat from Moff Gideon. This technically made him the ruler of Mandalore, which is a quest that Kryze herself was on, and a responsibility that he, Din Djarin, wanted no part of. In 10 ABY, something that had not been done in Mandalorian history happened. The tribes and ideologies of Mandalore stopped fighting each other, and instead focused on their common ground. The strict traditionalists, the Children of the Watch, and the more liberal Night Owls put their differences aside and recruited any other Mandalorians that they could to work together. This new alliance traveled to their devastated home planet and learned that not all hope was lost. The planet was devastated, but life persisted below ground. Ancient cities and the famous Beskar mines were still accessible. Even the surface was able to be traversed as the air was not toxic and radiation levels not as dire as they all once believed. These allied Mandalorians found an Imperial installation run by Gideon, the man who was responsible for the Night of 1,000 Tears. Gideon and his troops would be defeated. The installation would be destroyed. The Darksaber was destroyed in the struggle. While losing the Darksaber cost the Mandalorians a piece of their history, these events signaled a time of moving forward to a new Mandalore. They had to put some of the old ways behind them in order to forge a new path. Kryze earned the respect of the other Mandalorians without this old symbol of power. The Mandalorians were a unified people under Kryze's rule. At the time of this transmission, it's unclear how the Mandalorians would be involved in galactic events going forward. If I had to make an educated guess by looking at their history, I believe they're going to remain independent as they rebuild their own civilization. There would likely be open communications with the New Republic, even if the Mandalorians never officially join, as closing themselves from allies wouldn't help their fragile state. In Legends, Mandalore does join up with the New Republic. Shaisa rules for a brief time before he was killed in battle. Before he dies, he passes the title Mandalore to Boba Fett. In this version of Fett's story, after surviving the Sarlacc, he also gave up bounty hunting. He took the role as leader reluctantly, but eventually began to embrace it and found he was good at it. He reformed the Mandalorian protectors and made them a well-respected mercenary army with a strict code of honor. In 40 ABY, when the Yuuzhan Vong invade New Republic space, Fett and his protectors seemed to serve them against the Republic for a time. This was a lie, a way to get in close to this new enemy. The protectors turn on the Vong and aid the New Republic along with the New Jedi Order in defeating this new threat. The Mandalorians remain independent, but aid the New Republic as an ally. Throughout the years and well into the Legacy era, the Mandalorians remain independent, but aid the New Republic as an ally throughout the years and well into the Legacy era. By 130 ABY, Mandalore is still under control of independent Mandalorians, and the people are thriving once again.